Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you for coming to our second day of our 9th annual academic symposium. My name is John Weir, and I am Program Director for Healthcare Administration at Moraine University. I'm also a member of the Academic Symposium Committee, who I can tell you and assure you have been working tirelessly since last summer, and I would like to acknowledge them at this time. And in alphabetical order, we have Dr. Cheryl Ayala, Ms. Terry Drake. Terry's outside working the front. Mark Heimerl. Mark is also outside working the front desk. Sister Donna Ennis. Dr. Michael Ketterhagen, not here. Dr. Ida Miklowski, Ida's down there. Dr. Ed Ogle, who's the Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs here, and Miss Professor Pat O'Connor, who cannot be here today, and Miss Mary Schweiner, who is also out front. No. Mary?
She's right there.
Oh, hi, Mary. Oh, you're hiding back there. Okay, hi. At this time, I would like to introduce the president of Moraine University, who can welcome you to the university, Dr. Stephen DeSalvo.
Well, good morning. We are delighted to host this symposium. We're particularly happy to have our panel here today. How many folks were here last night? Just show of hands. So good number. So you got a taste of one side of the argument, which is why we should not have a university. And I think it was thought-provoking. There were certainly some controversial concepts that were presented. And today we'll explore the other side of the argument. We'll probe a little bit into those particular issues. So I just want to spend a few minutes first thanking our panelists and introducing you to them. And we'll start here. Dr. Sebert is the superintendent of the Fond du Lac School District. He's also a Marion alum. And so we welcome Dr. Sebert to our panel. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Steve.
Dr. Ruhland, president of Moraine Park Technical College, right down the road. And Dr. Ruhland and Dr. Short, who is the dean of UW Fond du Lac, also right down the street. We have a very collaborative effort with both of those institutions. We actually get together once a month to talk about collaboration amongst the schools. And for us at Marion, it's a particularly important collaboration because we do get many students at the two-year schools that end up coming to complete a four-year degree here. So most of you are aware of that, but I thought it was just an interesting point to make given the fact that we're having this discussion about the value of universities. So I welcome Dr. Ruhland and Dr. Short. And Dr. Rolf Wegenke is the president of the Wisconsin Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. Dr. Wegenke is the leader of a group of 21 private institutions in the state of Wisconsin. And I can tell you this, over the past 2 years, having attended national conferences, WACU, which is the acronym, is the model for other states to exemplify. We work together with our peer institutions in the private sector, private side of education, to look at, again, areas of collaboration, co-branding, marketing issues, and then legislative issues. And I want to point out one important thing that Dr. Wegenke was instrumental in. Last year, there was a big debate in Madison about the tuition benefits afforded to our students. Many of our students here get some form of Wisconsin tuition grant money. And the talk was that might go away completely or it might be reduced significantly. I want to publicly thank Dr. Wegenke for leading the effort amongst the private schools to make sure that money stayed intact and did not get cut. Some of our students would not be here if it were not for the efforts of Dr. Wegenke. So I thank you, Rolf.
Thank you.
And our panel will be moderated by Dr. Doug Bennett, who will be up here in a moment. And his bio is in your little brochure that you should have picked up outside. But Dr. Bennett is President Emeritus and Professor of Politics at Earlham College. And so we welcome him. He also is going to be our keynote speaker this evening, so we welcome you back to hear his thoughts as we recap the events of the 2 days. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Bennett up, and we will begin our session. Thank you.
Before we go on with that, there is a few announcements. One is the session is being recorded. We will be working diligently to get it posted on the web so that you can look at it at your leisure sometime in the future, and also refer some other people to look at it. We invite you to sign in so that we can send you information on not only these sessions, but on future sessions of the academic symposiums. Your feedback is valuable to us. It helps us plan, because I was on last year's Academic Symposium Committee, and I can tell you it does help us plan for subsequent symposiums. Please complete the evaluation form and get it to one of our committee members who will be standing at the doorway. Also, the traditional, please turn off your electronic devices. Just a couple comments as to why we're here today. As Dr. DeSalvo said, in the last 8 years, we have addressed controversial issues. That's part of the academic symposium process at Marion. This year is no different. The topic was, is a university necessary? Does it need to change? In preparation for I'm still back in last night. For today's programs, we had 2 panel discussions in February and last November. They focused on the liberal arts and also on the professions in liberal arts. Last night, as Dr. DeSalvo said, Dr. Murray spoke on the case for ending the BA degree. He wants to replace it with a variety of certification programs and focus on what the student learns, not where they learn it. He also urged students to look beyond the perceived earnings of a degree and look to the intrinsic value of the education. This morning I was watching Fox News, and they had a session on the Daly College in the City Colleges of Chicago Vocational Education. And what they were showing is that here is an educational institution in which the graduates have 100% placement. In fact, some of the graduates, before they graduate, have 2 job offers. We're going to be discussing a lot of things around this, both this morning and this afternoon session. You do have the brochure. There's also a sheet of the individual listing of events. And what is not on the brochure is, following this event, there is a lunch in which Dr. Jim Van Dyke, Dean of the School of Arts, Humanities, and Letters, will give a brief introduction on liberal arts. And we have 2 other Marion alumna who will be speaking. Dr. Maggie May and Representative Amy Sue Verwink will speak about their Marion education and what it has meant to them. This afternoon's panel are faculty members of Marion who will be discussing what is liberal arts at Marion University and what do we do to move forward with this. So at this time, I will welcome Dr. Bennett, and we can start with the panel presentation.
Good morning.
Morning.
We're talking about, is a college degree for everyone this morning. I'm very grateful to the symposium organizers to ask me to moderate this, but I'm not sure moderation is exactly the role I want to play. I think my role is more to provoke and instigate a little bit here. After all, we have 4 interested parties who have an interest in telling you that, yes, a college degree is for everyone because they're in the education business. So I want you to bring a measure of skepticism to this. The question we're talking about is a question that bears on your futures as students, the futures of your family members, the futures of our nation. We have sort of 2 modes of talking about education in the United States. One is to, of course, accept that education is important and we all ought to be as well educated as possible. And then we have a mode where we get to sort of criticizing our educational institutions and think they're failing us big time. We have a hard time finding a middle ground here, and I hope we can shed a little sensible light on not only whether a college degree is possible, but what kind of post-secondary education is right for people. As we've already mentioned, Charles Murray last night said maybe a BA degree, a liberal arts college degree, was appropriate for only 10 or 15% of the population. And there was a subtle suggestion that was maybe the better, more prepared and qualified 10 or 15%. And then, I thought this was odd, the suggestion that the BA degree was itself worthless and meaningless. So hard to sort of put together, why would you want a BA degree for the best and brightest that was itself a valueless, meaningless kind of thing? So we left a lot of questions on the table last night, and I'm delighted to have this panel. I'm delighted to hear that they work together well in this area. I've asked each of them to start by telling us a personal story, briefly, some moment in their own life that was important, decisive maybe, in their own education. And I encourage them not only to think about the happiest of happy stories, but maybe the difficult moments as well. So, James Sebert, why don't we start with you?
Okay, well, I only have positive stories. That's the only way that I operate. And for me, when I think my entire life has been spent in education, and for my money, it is the most wonderful profession in the world. And when I was in junior high school and then early in my high school years, it became very clear to me that being an educator was exactly what I needed to do and what I wanted to do to continue to have an influence on people around me and to spend my entire life in schools. And I've been really fortunate to be able to do that with a lot of opportunities, and have never regretted any of those opportunities that I've been so fortunate to have throughout my career to this point.
Good morning. Well, my story might be a little more difficult, and I'd like to think all of my experiences certainly have been on a positive end, but the story I'm going to share with you takes you back to my high school days, and there's many of you sitting out in this audience that I think, as looking at you, it's just been a short time since you exited from high school. But I've been out of high school for a few years. I won't quote the exact number of years, but it was typical back in my time frame when I was in high school, typically a senior year, when you had the heart-to-heart with your counselors about what are you going to do after you graduate from high school. And I remember to this day, in fact, if you happen to follow or read any of our local magazines, I'm new as the president at Moraine Park this past July, and my story's been told both in an Insight magazine and most recently in Verve, a magazine out of the Plymouth Sheboygan area. And my story is, when I was a high school senior, my guidance counselor told me I was not college bound. And I didn't quite know what that meant. I was devastated. Coming from a family of 10, I was the second youngest, of which the majority of them in the high school, we all went to the same high school, they were told they could go on to college. Now, I wasn't exactly an A student. I wasn't exactly a failing student, a D or F, but I was an average student. So difficulty was faced, and I was absolutely clueless, because when your counselor tells you you're not college bound, I wasn't going to sit in that office and say, well, then what do I do? And my story goes on to say that I had to figure it out on my own. And it took me to a journey to go to Madison Area Technical College because, again, the mindset often is if you're college bound, if you're told you're academically geared towards a 4-year college or university, that's where you went. If you were told you were not college bound, you typically either graduated, maybe dropped out at that point, or you chose the technical college route, which in the state of Wisconsin, because as I look at a lot of paraphernalia out there, I'm assuming we have out-of-staters here. Wisconsin is one of the unique educational systems that has a 2-year technical college system, whereas in a lot of other states, it's a community college system, which allows both the liberal arts transfer to a university or training specifically for careers directly going to the workplace. So I'm a proud graduate. I say that very proudly. I chose to go to Madison Area Technical College, and that's where they recognized my ability to pursue continued education, and my journey has me moving into completing a PhD and most recently becoming president of Moraine Park Technical College.
I'd like to give you 2 brief stories. One is about myself. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania we had about 500 people. My father was a miner, a coal miner, which is about as working class as you can get. I'm the first generation college student, but I was determined to go to college. My dream was absolutely go to college, and in fact it was Penn State University. I never had any other thing in mind, and it had to be the main campus. When I was a high school student, it was questionable whether, in fact, you would be admitted to universities. And, in fact, Penn State only admitted so many people, and, in fact, often told students that maybe they could go to one of their 2-year campuses and then transfer to the main campus. But my story was a story of determination. It was a story of parents who said, you have to go to college. It was a story of parents that said, this is transformation and this is what you want. And it was a story where absolutely my life went from a very small town perspective to one with enormous difference, divergence, new perspectives, new ways of looking at things. It changed my life forever, and certainly I have been committed to the transformational value of higher education. My second story is the story of my youngest daughter. My youngest daughter, I usually, and she knows that I say this about her, went to college on the 10-year plan. She began at a large university and decided that wasn't what she wanted. She dropped out of college and she started to work. She went back to college. She changed majors about 5 times. She got to the point where she was on her own, and in fact, she took a job in an institution, a halfway house for people with severe mental disabilities. She came home one day and said, I want to be in social work. This is exactly what I love. I love empowerment. I love being an advocate for people. I love the kinds of things that are done here. And I said, this is fantastic. Why couldn't you have decided that 8 years ago? But what we talked about was everything from salary potential to career advancement to why it was a fulfilling kind of career to why she knew this is exactly what she had done. This year she will graduate with a bachelor's degree, a BSW in social work, and I'm so pleased, and I'll be headed to her graduation in May. Hers is a story of taking several years to decide why is this an important place to be. In asking the question, I think, is college for everyone? It obviously depends, and depends when, and when is it appropriate, and when are you mature, and when do you know exactly what you want to do. She never, ever regretted any of her college experiences, even though she has many, many credits beyond the 120 that are required for graduation. But it took her on a long journey of changing majors, of soul-searching, of deciding why she was there, of attending a large major university, of going to a 2-year college, of finishing at a regional comprehensive university of about 8,000 students. But my story is a story that there are very different kinds of stories. There's adversity. There is not sure if you can being sure if you can succeed. There are the challenges of the program itself. There are the challenges of cost. There are the challenges of being able to afford college. There are challenges of, in fact, being successful. But the there are many different stories is the point that I would raise. And in fact, as we look to the future, there will be many different paths and many different kinds of stories. But in the end, if you ask someone who has a college degree, they will say it was one of the best decisions that they ever made.
I'm hard-pressed to think of a negative story. I have a 17-year-old son who is in the last stages of his college search. And the other day he said to me, as I think of college, I think it's going to be like heaven. And that's exactly how I felt growing up. I came from a family, my parents still live on Highway 23, but substantially west of here, so not that far away. I was raised in a house that did not have central heating, did not have running hot water. If you took a bath, you heated it on the stove. No one, needless to say, in my family had ever attended college. They didn't know anything about college. But I knew, and I had wonderful, wonderful teachers who told me that there was this whole world of learning and doors open to me that maybe hadn't been open to either of my parents. And I remember one particular teacher, I want to mention her name because she's that special. Her name was Joanne Schwitz. And one day in sophomore English class, she asked me to stay after, and I thought, uh-oh. And then she said, and she looked at me, Rolf, Wegenke, what are we going to do with you? And she started to tell me, you should go to college. And it was wonderful. And I didn't have, in my whole undergraduate years, things went wrong. I mean, I got sick. I had classes. I never could master the Russian language, for example. That was a hard class. I thought I was going to flunk, and I was smart enough to drop it eventually. But it was tough. I did have, though, as I thought about it, a negative experience, and I started to tell it last night, so Doug would come back to me and say, yes, you did. In graduate school at the University of Chicago, when I was studying for my PhD, there was a faculty member whom I will not name, who for the had a sherry for the new graduate students. And he said, at Harvard, they have wit. At Chicago, we have the truth. I was the only one who laughed. And he said afterwards, when I did laugh, I'm perfectly serious. And that's when I realized, in fact, higher education is not perfect. It is not heaven. There is arrogance. There is elitism. There are egos. And with all of those flaws, I still feel it's about as close to heaven as you can get. So that's my story.
So thank you for those stories. And one thread that runs through them is it turns out to make a difference what other people say to you.
Yes.
I want you now to tell us a little about your institutions. And if I can, that could wind up being pretty wordy. So I want you to tell us in a sentence about your students and in a sentence about your mission. What purpose does your education serve? And then I want you to, in a sentence or two, to say something about what you are most proud of that your institution accomplishes on behalf of your graduates. Who are your students? What's your mission? What are you most proud of in terms of the accomplishments of your students?
Why don't I go backward? Let's go
Okay.
backwards because I don't have students in a sense.
You're just speaking for 21 institutions.
I'm speaking for 21, and we have collectively 60,000 students. Our mission is Wisconsin's private nonprofit colleges working together to advance educational opportunity. You can say it in an elevator, but it means a lot. Everything we do at the association, we ask ourselves, how does that advance educational opportunity for you, for the students who are here? So whether it's advocating for financial aid, whether it's establishing collaborative programs to help our member colleges control their costs, This is news to Dr. DeSalvo. You'll get it ahead of the president. That collectively we saved our members $9 million last year. So although it's in a variety of ways, it all comes down to if they can control their costs, that makes it affordable for you. So we're very mission driven. We are very focused on the student, and I can tell you the outcomes. Our members enroll a higher percentage of low-income, first-generation, and minority students than does, excuse me for saying this, it's just a fact, the University of Wisconsin system. What's more, we keep faith. We graduate in higher percentages more low-income, first-generation, minority students than the University of Wisconsin system. I work together with Kevin Riley, who's president of the UW system, on a daily basis, and with Dan Clancy, the president of the technical college system. We all think we need to do more. So it's not boastful, but that's our outcome, and we're determined to do more. And we get into the talk of is a degree necessary, that's going to be my point. We need more.
Well, why don't we come right back down the line?
Okay. At the University of Wisconsin Fond du Lac, our students are local students. They're largely commuter students. They're students who are able to come and take the first 2 years of a liberal arts program with the intent of transferring to a 4-year institution. Some, in fact, stop at an associate's degree. We offer the associate's degree, and many of them will stop at the associate's degree with the concentration in different areas. But our mission is access, it's affordability, it's working with the local community. UW Fond du Lac, in fact, is county-owned. Our buildings are owned by the county of Fond du Lac, and Fond du Lac asked to have a 2-year campus of the University of Wisconsin in this area. What I'm most proud about would be helping students make dreams come true. Each year when we give scholarships, students tell stories about how the scholarships and being able to have UW education locally allowed them to stay at home. To parents, often they will tell me it allowed their son or daughter who didn't know what he wanted to major in, who didn't want to go to a large school, to be able to come to campus in small classes and be able to decide what exactly he wanted to do, to experience success, and to transfer to a 4-year institution. It's looking at, in fact, students who are able to transfer to Madison, to Oshkosh, to Milwaukee, to Stevens Point, to Marian University, and help them make that happen. It's being able to look at the possibility of collaboration with Marian, with Moraine Park Technical College on technical kinds of programs and the possibilities of bringing to the Fond du Lac area bachelor's level completion programs that are very much collaborative in nature. And so this is basically, I think, what we do at UW Fond du Lac and why I think I'm so proud of the things that we do.
As I define who the students are of Moraine Park, each of our students that come to Moraine Park have their own story to tell, and what is most unique about them is that they may be coming for a degree completion, which at the 2-year technical college we have the Associate of Applied Science, a 2-year degree. We have a technical diploma, which can be 1 and 2 years in length, or we have certificates, which are less than 1 year. But more importantly, we also have a large student population that is coming either to get the skills, the knowledge, the abilities to gain employment, or they're coming from their place of employment to get advanced job skill training, upgrading their job skills. Our mission, as we look at it, is innovative education for an evolving workforce and a community. So our students may not necessarily be coming for the degree completion, which that is typically what all of us in our educational world are held accountable for. It is the number of students who graduate. But as president of Moraine Park Technical College, I'm very pleased, always very proud to state that we may not be focusing necessarily on degree completers. What are we most proud of? It is those students who graduate and gain employment. We have a stellar employment rate, But more importantly, we're also proud of the accomplishments of those students who enter into Moraine Park but choose to stop out because of the fact that they've gained employment. That is one of our greatest challenges, but it's also one of our greatest opportunity, is students who start at Moraine Park and employers. If you follow anything about unemployment, if you follow anything about our various counties and the job opportunities out there, employers are at our door seeking students when they may have completed 3, 6, 9, 12 credits. And we're proud of that.
Okay, Sheila. Well, in the Fond du Lac School District, we serve approximately 7,500, a little bit less than that, students, and we're fortunate to serve them. And we have an increasing amount of diversity in the Fond du Lac Public Schools. We have an increasing amount of socioeconomic challenges, but we embrace those as ways that we can help kids find a future that can really be inspirational to them. Our mission statement has a lot of verbiage to it, but the key components of it are high achievement, personalized learning, and continuous growth. And we try to embrace those on a daily basis as we're trying to prepare kids for the next step in their futures. And then in terms of our graduation rates and our what we're most proud of with our graduates, I'm very proud that our graduation rate continues to improve. Yearly it does that, and we've got more and more ways to help kids get that first step, that high school diploma that is so very critical to any type of future education or future workforce readiness. And I'm also very proud of the fact that when I look at our pre-K-12 system, that all of our students have the opportunity to be influenced by just a dynamic group of individuals that give them a lot of opportunity and a lot of educational perspective that prepares them for that next level.
And James, about what percentage of your high school graduates go on to some form of post-secondary education?
That's interesting. Last year's data, we had 55% of our seniors. 31% went on to four-year degrees, and 24% went on to technical college. So that creates another, we're proud of that, but it also creates the question of us doing a better job of what's happening to the other 45%.
Right. I want to ask a follow-up to this, and I want, there's a strict ground rule on this. I'm going to want you to, as I ask the question, think what you're going to say, and I want you to say it no matter what the other three say. So I don't want you to, so since she said that, I'm going to say this, or I just want to add to that. I want you to hear the answers to this question. I want you to say, and Rolf, for you, it's not Waiku, but the 21 institutions.
Okay.
What's the biggest challenge you face in going on being successful at fulfilling your mission? You might want to jot a word or two down. What's the biggest challenge you face in going on being successful, fulfilling your mission? John, why don't we start with you this time?
One of the biggest challenges I think we face at UW-Fond du Lac would be increasing decreases in public support in terms of actual dollars. As you look at the changes in higher education, you see that public support for higher education, not just here, not just in Wisconsin, but across the country, is going down. The challenge, of course, is that the cost given to students will go up, and that, in fact, tuition will go up. As we look at an access mission that focuses on accessibility, affordability, we have to make sure that college remains affordable. In terms of moving ahead, that becomes ever so much more difficult as we find that students are working more to be able to pay tuition, are taking out huge loans, aren't able to afford the increases in their tuition, yet at the same time, the target audience that we have is one with limited financial means. As we look ahead, we have to find ways to continue affordability, to make sure that, in fact, students are able to get to college. The question, is college for everyone, I think becomes a dangerous question. Because as you find tuition going up, as you find debt becoming more and more oppressive in terms of when students graduate, when you see that college student debt is larger than credit card debt, then you begin to ask that question, is college worth it? I think we all would agree college is worth it, but we have to maintain affordability. If we ask the question, is college for everyone, what's the other side to the question? If it's not for everyone, who is it for? How do we determine that? The dangerous part, I think, of the question today is that in many ways it can become anti-intellectual. That, in fact, it's something we ridicule, that it's only for a certain few people. So I think the challenge is maintaining affordability and, in fact, making sure that access mission continues.
Sheila Ruhland, why don't we come next to you?
If I were to respond to what is our greatest challenge, I can summarize it in one word. Within the technical college system, our greatest challenge today is the image. There's a perception out there that the Wisconsin Technical College system, of which Moraine Park is one of 16, is an institution, is an educational pathway for those that are less academically able to pursue a four-year university. We've worked very hard at Moraine Park in communicating and changing that image to better inform our parents, to better inform our guardians of students, and to also move into the middle school level of making people aware of the great opportunities and at a very good cost factor. I've said for many years, Moraine Park Technical College, the Wisconsin Technical College system, is one of the best kept secrets in the educational world. And I don't say that because I'm a product of the technical college system. I say that because someone who experienced it firsthand, more importantly than as a student, as a faculty person, as an administrator in the Wisconsin Technical College system, but then also, more importantly, having had the wonderful opportunity to work at the University of Missouri-Columbia and the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. So I've experienced it from a high school education level, I've experienced it from a two-year system, and I've experienced it from the four-year level. And so when I say that about an image, in the 9 months that I've been back in the wonderful state of Wisconsin, I have spent a good majority of my time working with many of our employers, from a small mom and pop business to Mercury Marine, who's in our backyard, helping them understand what it is that we can do, but what we don't have control over, of having employees ready to and interest for the many jobs. We have many great employers amongst the many counties that are part of Moraine Park, and they are struggling to get people interested in the technical field, in the trades field, in manufacturing, in welding, in CNC, in engineering-related jobs. And is part of that due to the fact of an image? Absolutely. If I talk to any employer, if I talk to any presidents of our many companies, whether it's Mid-Stata Aluminum, whether it's Mayville Engineering, whether it's Harley-Davidson, Kohler Inc., those are all companies we work for, we both are at the table to see what can we do differently, how can we better partner with our secondary schools to get students to understand the great job opportunities that are out there. And before I conclude and pass it on to Jim, it was interesting yesterday in preparation for this symposium today. In the Chronicle of Higher Education, there was a brief article on the America's Real Class System by Frank Donahue. And I found this really, really insightful because I think it lends itself very clearly to a little bit about last night's topic along with today's panels. And Frank shares, we've lost sight of how valuable are young people who choose not to go to college, yet still find a way to be productive. It's time for us to rethink the relationship between academic credentials and real work ability.
Very nice, Sheila.
James Sebert?
The words I wrote down right after that question were embracing change and challenging the status quo. And if I go back to the terms that I talked about in terms of our mission statement, high achievement, we have a great deal to be proud of in the Fond du Lac School District, but I can't say that every student is achieving at a high level. And until we can say that, we have work to do. When we talk about personalized learning, particularly at the secondary level, to ensure that every child has an individualized plan and knows what their future is capable of and where their strengths lie and how we can help them through personalized learning to make that happen. We have work to do to get to that point. And when we talk about continuous growth, embracing technology in the classroom, embracing what research tells us as best practice in terms of ways to improve our achievement, we have to be willing to look at those ideas. We have to be willing to embrace that change is inevitable. And while it's not always comfortable, it's critical for us to continue to provide quality opportunities for every child in Fond du Lac.
Rolf?
I think the biggest challenge for the 21 private colleges, and it's been echoed here right down the table, and I didn't change my mind, and that is you. And I'm talking about the students. And it may not in the way you think that you're a challenge in this way, but it is exploding student need. This has been a terrible recession. This is a jobless recovery. And what we experienced within a 1-year period, there has been among our 21 colleges a 54% increase in the number of students who have what is called a zero EFC, and that means, in short, you and your families can afford to contribute nothing to your higher education. If you want to know what keeps Dr. DeSalvo up, and he hasn't told me this, I just know it because it's true of all of the presidents, our fastest growing expense is institutional student aid and private aid we have to go out and raise. That challenge of increased student need, and none of you, in our view, should be forced to wait or to forego educational opportunity because of the times and because of things outside of your control. So our biggest challenge is you and helping all of you collectively get the education that you want and that you need to be successful.
One of the questions underneath the thought, the question is a college degree for everyone, is a wonder about whether graduates are ready for the workforce. So I want to ask each of you to say in a few minutes whether you think your graduates are ready for the workforce and how you know that. And since we're talking about whether a college degree is ready, James, why don't we start with you? Are your graduates without a college degree ready for the workforce? How do you want them to think about that?
You know, I can't say universally that I can say that every single student that we produce is career ready, nor can I say that every student we produce is college ready. But what I'm excited about is the increased amount of collaboration that we've had over the past few years with local manufacturers, with the Association of Commerce, with higher ed, to try and figure out how do we do a better job of ensuring that. Mm-hmm. So my goal is, and our goal as a district is, to ensure that every child has the skills to be workforce and college. When I say college, I'm referring to the entire higher education realm, ready. And we're going to continue to work to achieve that.
Can I just ask you to add, what do you see as those essential capabilities or skills you want students to have so that they are ready in those terms?
Sure. For me, it comes a lot back to the soft skills that we talk a lot with our employers about, the skills like communication, critical thinking, the ability to collaborate with others, work as a team. Those, to me, I think are skills that we have to continue to embrace and infuse into our traditional curriculum to ensure that students not only have that exceptional knowledge base and from a graduation perspective have met our criteria, but they also have the ability to work in those ways.
Sheila, how about you? What are your graduates ready for the workforce, and what do you see as the skills they really need?
Graduates at a Moraine Park Technical College are absolutely ready for the workforce, and what do I base that on? We're fortunate as part of the technical college system to have advisory boards that represent each of our degree programs. Moraine Park has over 100 degrees that we work with. And so close to 50 advisory committees where anywhere from 12 to 18 people from the various business communities are part of them. For example, I'll reference our Engine Research Development Program, where we have individuals represented on that committee that meets twice a year. The process is the same for all advisory committees. We meet to review curriculum. We meet to discuss concerns that employers have as they're hiring graduates. We meet to look at curriculum changes, course changes. We talk about if there's internships, clinical experiences as part of that degree. So in the case of engine research design, our main employers that hire our graduates come out of the Milwaukee area, to include Harley-Davidson, Briggs & Stratton, Kohler, Mercury Marine. We have representation that includes not only those people that might be on the front line, but also those that may be at various levels of management. So that's really the key assurance. So I say that about our graduates ready for employment. I also want to add, however, again, the many conversations that as I sit at these advisory committee meetings, while they will not deny the fact that we're coming with the technical skills, we're coming with the trades area, what we still lack is a solid foundation in the academic area. Ability to communicate, ability to write, the ability to read and understand, the ability to work in a team, collaboration, partnership. Those are the factors that is a very consistent theme in the 9 months that I've been here in the Fond du Lac. And we also have campuses in Beaver Dam and West Bend. And so I'm meeting with employers in all of those areas. They will consistently reference that. And what's changing from the employer standpoint as they're hiring our graduates, or if they're hiring the individual who has chosen to stop out because a job opportunity is there, the application process is changing for them. It is moving beyond filling out an application electronically to more interaction with people that they will be working with as part of their application screening process. And what's more important today, while we understand there's a workforce shortage in key manufacturing trade jobs, as I work with our students today, I have to explain to them that just because there's a shortage, Mercury Marine might have 20 job openings in this given area, you can't necessarily feel that if I go apply, I'm going to be hired. Because the employers today are looking at key skills, not only the occupational technical skills, but they're looking at the soft skills, as Jim referenced. And guess what? They're not necessarily going to hire. They're going to have that vacancy, in some cases that go a year longer.
John Short?
In many ways, we prepare our students for transfer to four-year programs. Are they workforce ready? We would have to do a study that would look at what are they like once they finish four-year programs. What we can say, in fact, is that when our students transfer to four-year institutions, they're more likely to complete their degree than the students who actually started there. So we think we give them a great preparation to, in fact, finish a four-year degree. At the same time, though, we do assessment and we work with our students to try and make sure that, in fact, they are getting the speaking across the curriculum, writing across the curriculum. Whether it's in a science class where they have to do a poster presentation in our commons, whether it is a public speaking class when they're asked to come up with collaborative ideas on how to make the campus better, whether they're involved in service learning, where they're asked to, in fact, find out more about the community, we try and constantly ask our students, are you applying your knowledge? Are you writing? Are you speaking? Are you doing the kinds of critical problem solving and creative activities that we want to see once you graduate? We need to do a better job of making sure we are assessing our graduates, that we're looking at, in fact, rubrics that will measure these key kinds of things that are critical to our liberal arts mission and that are absolutely essential to employers in the future. One little story I'd like to tell, and this is once when I graduated from college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And in fact, one of the things that happened was the IRS offered me a job. My major was political science. I had no accounting courses. I just didn't know why they were offering me a job with the IRS, but I went ahead and filled out, took the Federal Service exam, and in fact went through the interview. In the end, what they said was that we're looking for people who can learn, who are lifelong learners, who in fact teach you what you need to know about accounting, what you need to know about the IRS regulations. What we can't teach you is the ability to learn. What we can't teach you is the ability to adapt. What we can't teach you is the ability to, in fact, work on your own. These are critical kinds of skills: persuasion, the ability to adapt, the ability to react to change, the ability, in fact, to respond to new circumstances in life. Hopefully, these are the things that we are instilling in our graduates.
The short answer is yes. We are, in these 21 colleges and universities, preparing students successfully for careers. Are there exceptions? For heaven's sakes, yes. This is the real world. I mean, there are people who don't find jobs and will not find jobs. That's not the issue. The issue is, are we preparing students for success? And the record speaks for itself. They are employed. They become productive citizens. As to what employers are looking for, there are, as in everything else, academic research on this question. And the latest figures, and I just am going to pull this out of the remarks I prepared, that employers are most interested in the 3 C's. Used to be the 3 R's. Now it's the 3 C's. They are communications. 89% of prospective employers across, this is nationwide research, 89% put number 1 priority in their hiring on communication skills. Can you speak articulately? Can you make a point? Can you listen? Listening is part of communication. So that's the number 1. The second one is critical thinking and analytical reasoning. Critical thinking and analytic reasoning. The world has become infinitely more complex than it ever was before, including when I was growing up and entering the workforce. You have to know so much more. As a matter of fact, you can't know it all. You're not going to learn it all in college. But if you can apply what you have learned and things you are going to continue to learn in critical analytic reasoning, you're a hot property with employers. So the second C is critical thinking. The third is creativity, innovation. There are a lot of people who are prepared to and are happy being a cog in the wheel. But what makes an entrepreneurial organization, mostly we're talking businesses here, succeed are those who are innovate, who are on to the next idea. So and 81% of the employers identified, and that's what got creativity into 3rd place for hiring. Communication, critical thinking, and creativity, those are the things employers are looking for, and that's what a liberal arts degree gives you. That is what a liberal arts degree gives you, and that's why I can say our graduates are prepared for the world of work. I want to add one other thing. There is more to life and more to your education, I hope you all know, than your job. You need a job. I need a job. I have a family to support. I hope someday, not too soon, to retire, but there is more to it, and I would single out another objective that I quote another academic, Stanley Fish, who said then with the University of Illinois, who said of the 9/11 terrorists, they're just as educated as anyone else. I beg your pardon, that is not education. They may have known skills, but there should be a moral and ethical dimension to your education that is just as, and I would personally say more important than preparation for a job. So that's my commercial. I'm going to throw that in at the end.
Good, good. Well, let me invite others into this conversation. You might have objections. You might have questions that we haven't yet addressed. You might have rejoinders you want to give to something that's been said. Have you a comment or a question?
Dr. Bennett, we will have microphones out. Our panelists, in their adaptability, are going to share microphones. If you raise your hand, they'll bring the mic to you so that everybody can hear the question that you ask.
Well, while you think about that, let me ask our panelists something else. As we think about jobs, this is not what any of you do for as your main occupation in life, but you must think about what are the jobs that are going to be out there in the future. What's different about the world of work, say 10 years from now as opposed to 10 years ago? What should young people be thinking about in terms of the jobs that might be for them in the future? How's that changing? And Rolf, why don't we start with you and come down?
I think it is a continuation of what I was saying before, and I wish I had a source to cite, but 50% of the jobs that those of you, if any of you are freshmen, that you will fill when you graduate in 4 years don't exist today. That's the kind of rapid change that's going through. So if you've learned how to learn and you've learned to communicate critical thinking and reasoning and creativity, whatever those jobs are, you're going to be positioned to take advantage of them. But I don't have a crystal ball.
I think the critical thing is change, and that, in fact, if you're graduating today, be prepared to change jobs 10 or more times. Be prepared to, in fact, shift gears. Be prepared to be a lifelong learner. Be prepared to be entrepreneurial. Be prepared to, in fact, be a global thinker. Be prepared to be competitive. The future, I think, belongs to the people who can take what they know and use it in very creative ways and are not afraid to embrace change.
As I look at the jobs in the future, I would ask if you haven't taken a look at the Fond du Lac area's retirement and retention study that was completed this past fall. We have a massive amount of individuals who are making the decision to retire, and when they retire in the next 2 to 3 years, their decision is to not go to work in any other capacity. So what that means, and again, someone who works very closely with our major employers throughout several counties, we're going to see a high demand area in many fields in the engineering area. Certainly we're seeing the growth in areas related to environmental sustainability, green. We're always going to have the need in the healthcare area. And then the other one that came to mind as I looked at this is just in the broader field of manufacturing, in the area of CNC tool design. And those are typically degrees that are less than a 2-year degree. These employers are clearly stating to me that a large percentage of their workforce is in that 65-year age, and they're ready to retire, but they've hung on for other reasons, whether the employers are dangling the carrot, we need to keep you here because we can't find people to replace you. So there are jobs out there. There are jobs out there as students are going to exit from either a 2-year technical college or a 4-year degree, and those are some of the areas that I'd share with you, depending upon where your degrees are taking you at this point. Those are some avenues to look at.
It is. It's a very evolving job marketplace. The research that we see a lot is that in the next 10 years, only 1/3 of the jobs in Wisconsin will require a bachelor's degree or higher. So that would tell us that 66% require tech school or less. Now, of course, we also have the manufacturing data from the retirement survey that Sheila referenced, and that refers specifically to Fond du Lac. Now, what I have to do, though, I think as a superintendent, is balance the fact that we are going to have a lot of kids that are going to work in Fond du Lac. We're going to have a lot of kids that are going to work in Wisconsin. But we have to have a high-caliber K-12 system that prepares kids to work anywhere in the United States and anywhere in a global economy. So it's critical for us as a public school district to recognize data, to embrace it, but to also have a high-caliber K-12 system that prepares children for anything that they possibly want to do anywhere in the world.
I think we have a question up here. Introduce yourself as you ask a question or offer a comment.
Be happy to. My name is James Gray. I teach sports and recreation management and business law here at Marian University. One of the themes that have emerged quite clearly in my mind is the issue of change. And I'd like to hear from each of the panelists as to what's the context when you consider the issue of change? So, for example, what do you think about? How do you prepare for change? I'd like to know what type of strategies you consider when we're trying to grapple with this very elusive and challenging issue.
I'll be happy to start on that because as a new president, almost a year, anytime you're new to an organization, one of the greatest fears that employees within the organization, let alone students currently enrolled in programs, is what is he or she going to have us do differently now, or what changes might they make, or how might we reorganize, how might we redesign? And I think from my perspective as a leader in a large educational organization that covers multiple counties here, it's all about the culture. It's all about the culture and the environment that you create, not only for the employees of the organization, but for our students. And it's all about bringing people to the change and working through a process and having them part of whatever that change might be. And I think most importantly, as a key leader, as the president of the college, I have to be very open if ideas come forth, if ideas are recommended and they're implemented, is that a year or so after the change, we need to analyze it. We need to look at, did it work? Do we continue to move forth as is, or do we recognize, wow, what a mistake we made, or wow, what a decision we made. Maybe we didn't exactly do it right. And you know what? It's okay to recognize that some of the changes you implement maybe didn't work out for the best. And what's real critical on the educational side, on behalf of Moraine Park, is where it impacts students, you have to allow time of how you implement that change factor to come in. Doing something today and expecting it to be implemented tomorrow, you end up having a very reactive state of mind. And our students today come with a lot more on the plate than what they did for some of us sitting here today a few years ago.
I don't know that I could add anything to what Sheila said. I mean, when I think about change, I think about the levels of change, and whether we're talking about a first order or a second order type of change. Obviously, the amount of detail that has to go into planning and engaging individuals in those kinds of processes differs based on the type of change that you're talking about. But I think Sheila really hammered it. You try to do the best job you can to engage people and to put timelines together that can implement effective change, while also recognizing, from my perspective, we only have one shot with a child. They're only in third grade one time. And so, for example, when we're working on scheduling right now, and we're going to say next year in K3, every student is going to get 2.5 hours of language arts reading instruction. The kids in third grade this year didn't get that. So I've always got to think too, there's timelines, and then there's also what are the critical things that we're about that need to happen relatively quickly so that we don't create gaps or miss kids having those exceptional opportunities.
I'd add to James's question, you to reflect a little bit about what's driving change, what's requiring change, what's leading to the necessity for change. Why isn't doing well what we've been doing enough?
I think, if I could go back to the original question, I think the way I've given up trying to predict change. Just know you're going to live with it. And I think the key thing with change is twofold. One is to manage it. If you panic, change will manage you. So whatever life throws at you to the best of your ability, I think you need to management. The second thing you need is an anchor. Change is going to come. You need some fundamental values from which you will adapt to change, resist change, modify change, or make change. And again, it goes back, I think, to Doug's initial question of what is your mission. You don't need to follow every fad. You need to do what is best for the purpose for which you are here and what you're trying to accomplish. Why is there change? I think there are change for a variety of reasons. One is the knowledge explosion. As I said earlier, there is so much more to be known than when I was in college. I mean, knowledge is exploding. There are new approaches. The other thing is globalization. It is a smaller world. We're not talking international relations anymore. Globalization means is there are global businesses, education is global, there are global communities, and these issues come at you from a variety of ways. And so those are just some of the changes, of the drivers, I think, of change. The other, and this is more parochial and personal for me, is I think that there is an increasing sense of in which government is driving change, and especially in education at all levels. I think we face enormous and almost uncontrolled mandates that even keeping track of them and modifying. I don't know if this is the case with Fond du Lac schools, but I would guess that perhaps the increase in emphasis on reading is out of the state of Wisconsin's Read to Lead task force, which required more emphasis. Maybe you were ahead of that, but there are things happening that we're responding to, whether it's the knowledge explosion or government fiat, that makes change come faster.
I don't know if John wants into this.
Another thing that I think brings about change is certainly the idea that the United States of America used to be a given that we were number one. And in fact, that's now being challenged economically. World superpowers economically, in terms of China and India, are now rivaling the American economic sector. Beyond that, educational systems that were second to none in the United States are now being challenged by, in fact, educational systems throughout the world. If you look at what drives change, the other question I would ask is what impedes change? Inertia, we've always done it that way. Complacency, a sense that everything is fine when, in fact, the world may be passing us by. How do you prepare for change? I think it's by looking at the world in terms of not having a right or wrong answer, in terms of creative problem solving, in terms of problem-based learning, in terms of getting around this sense that if you tell me the right answer and I write it down, everything will be fine, because it won't. Things, in fact, demand imagination, creativity, interdisciplinary thinking beyond the normal ways of doing things, being able to be sensitive about other cultures, other histories, other people, and being able to be prepared for dealing with them, their cultures, their ideas, their languages, that in fact go beyond often what were accepted in the past.
Another question.
Thank you. Hi. I guess my question is...
Introduce yourself,
sorry.
please.
I'm Sherry Tran. I'm a student here at Marion. My question kind of comes from personal experience, as I'm 38 and decided to come back to college because I am a first-generation student that graduated high school and attended college at this age. So my question, I guess, would be more for the superintendent of the Fond du Lac School District. Are there, I guess, special circumstances that you guys have in place for high school kids that are not necessarily interested in college, but that you're watching them and trying to teach them why an education in college is maybe not necessarily the right choice for them, but it can be important for their future? Is there, I guess, a list of kids, not necessarily a list, but you're paying more attention to some of these kids that maybe have parents that haven't graduated high school or haven't gone to college?
It's a good question, and congratulations to you for being in college. What we have in 11th grade currently is we have a comprehensive school counseling model in the entire district. And in 5th, 8th, and 11th grade, we have conferences with students and a parent with the guidance counselor, school counselor. And the purpose of what those conferences are for is to talk about a student's strengths, to look at the data that we collect on them, and we're getting much better with data warehousing so we can show how a student is progressing. We take in 9th grade and 10th grade ACT plan and explore Explore, which gives career readiness information. And we use that to talk with kids about what are your strengths, what do you think you want to look at, with their parent in the room, which has proved very helpful. The other thing we want to do is, starting in 9th grade, do a much nicer job of transitioning from 8 to 9 and start a career portfolio. Next year at Fond du Lac High School, we'll start one-to-one computing. So it'll be very easy for kids to have an electronic portfolio that they start to put together that really helps them start thinking about college and career a lot earlier. So I think we're doing some good things, but I think we are on the cusp of doing even better things to help every child see what the future might hold for them.
Thought I saw a question up here.
Hello, my name is Caitlin. I'm a senior nursing student. If you were to retire tomorrow, what is the most important thing that you have accomplished in your current role that you think could kind of leave a lasting imprint at your institutions?
If I were to retire tomorrow, and that isn't going to happen, unfortunately or fortunately, but I believe what I would share with you is that every day I come to work, I love what I do. And again, if you followed earlier my pathway, what I would leave and clearly remember and be most proud of, every day I go to work, my ultimate goal when I leave at the end of the day is that I've made a difference in the lives of our students. That's what it's all about. I'm making a difference in the lives of our students, and I guess that's why I, through the years, got that passion for education.
If I were to retire tomorrow, I've only been here in Fond du Lac. This is only my second year, so I hope that when I do retire, I can give you a story about Fond du Lac. But I'll give you a story from another state. I spent 20-some-odd years in the state of Arkansas, which is one of the poorest states, and it was in one of the poorest parts of one of the poorest states in the nation. Local agencies came to us and said, we really need help. We, in fact, need to build upon community development, and we need help with social services. We were in a part of the state where there were no social work programs. We started from scratch. We learned about what social work was all about. We learned about accreditation. We worked with the state of Arkansas and, in fact, worked with communities. We worked with communities where there was little hope, where we had too many kids being referred to juvenile court, where there were no opportunities in the evening, where there were many times villages and towns with little hope. We worked to develop a social work program and get it accredited, and worked with local agencies to, in fact, work on community development. To this day, we now have in that part of the state of Arkansas accredited programs, licensed social workers, people who have gone back into their communities to make them better, again, in the Mississippi Delta, in a very, very poor part of a very poor state. To this day, I know that, in fact, communities are thriving and doing better because of those kinds of initiatives that were responsive to a local community.
Dr. DeSalvo actually stole my thunder. I mean, I think what makes what I do so exciting is the students who have been helped through the Wisconsin Tuition Grant, through other scholarships programs. I can't convey to you how exciting you are and what you do and the impact you're going to have and are already having on your families and on your communities are. And I actually don't think when I retire anyone's going to say that, because the focus is on you. But my own satisfaction is that I think in some way we've made a difference and helped really thousands of students.
Those are all really good answers. I'm such a long way from retirement that I don't often think that way. Not that any of you are that close either. I think my comments would be directly back to the opportunities that we provide for the kids too. I think that's really what it's all about. That's what drives me. And in the past few years, we've added a virtual school. We're going to start our first charter school next year in partnership with Mercury Marine. We're doing the one-to-one computing. We're doing a tremendous amount of professional development for our staff to help them continue to get better and evolve. And we've got just such a focus on how do we meet increasingly diverse needs for kids, and it's so very exciting. So for me, that's what I'm really proud of, and I'm really proud of the staff that we have and how hard they work to meet the needs of the kids that we're so blessed to serve.
If I can make an advertisement here, it sounds like there are wonderful career possibilities for people in education. Here are people who love their work. I thought I saw a question over here in the middle. Is there one here?
Yes, I have a question and a comment first. I'm wondering if you missed a very significant change component in our, especially the Wisconsin culture, and the change in the collective bargaining law that has happened within the past year and a half. The reason I'm suggesting that is because, and I know there's probably not anything that deals with your 26 institutions, Rolf, Mr. Wegenke, but or Dr. Wegenke, but I know that the morale of teachers is real significant in the learning and the process that goes on within the educational environment. And I'm wondering if the morale, the fact that the dignity of the people don't have anything to say now about their, except maybe on a committee forum or something like that, about their certain key issues that are important to them, not only financial but also other classroom type issues. If that's had an effect, I'm in personal contact with many of your employees, not Waco employees, although I guess I am in contact with Waco employees too. I work with them. And the morale there is not a pleasant, positive thing. And I was wondering if that has been addressed. Mostly you're talking about education as preparing for jobs. I'm wondering about preparing people for life and happiness that doesn't necessarily mean economic happiness. So my question would be, have you noticed the morale issue in your institutions, and have you addressed it or not?
I'm happy to start with that, Dr. Ketterhagen. Certainly since February of last year, there's been significant change at the state level. And at the brunt of that has teachers have been, specifically teachers, it seems, more than education in general, have taken a lot of that brunt. And it has been hard. And we have pockets of people that are still struggling, and we're doing what we can to try and involve people still in processes. But we're also recognizing a financial reality that's vastly different than we've ever had before. And we have to make some changes that help us then ensure that we can continue to employ the people we want to employ. So my goal has been, even though we last year had to come up with $4.4 million, we were able to rehire every person that retired for the first time in the history of the district. And my goal continues to be to divert resources into the classroom, into people, and into student learning. And we are continuing to find ways to do that. And I think the more we do that, the more people are hopefully recognizing that things really aren't all that different. And we are still committed to creating a wonderful environment for students and staff in Fond du Lac.
Anyone else on that?
Let me just comment on that. It was interesting, well over a year ago when I was a finalist for the presidency here at Moraine Park. I've been out of the state of Wisconsin for 12 years because I was one of those individuals that felt in order for me to eventually move into a presidency, I needed to experience other educational systems. And so I chose to go to the West Coast and the East Coast. During this process, I was asked by many individuals, why would you want to come back to Wisconsin under the very contentious collective bargaining and many other things? And I looked at them and I said, well, why wouldn't I? I'm coming most recently from North Carolina, which is a non-union state. And so my response was, with or without a collective bargaining, we'll do fine. So as a new president, I think the light took away from collective bargaining, and the faculty at Moraine Park more interested in seeing what is this new president going to do. And I haven't seen the morale issue decline. I think all of us face that, though. It's very important that we're attuned to the employees because we are a good place to work. With or without collective bargaining, you will always have employees that are not happy. That are not happy, and they always have contentious issues. And so as we move through this process, our faculty are currently under a collective bargaining agreement which will expire in June of 2013. We will use this year, and we are using this year, to actively look at an employee handbook. That's common when you're in a non-union state to have an employee handbook. Basically guides the same process. It has clearly defined responsibilities of faculty. It has clearly defined responsibilities of support staff. But more importantly, it's not a message that will be dictated or driven by the president of the college, that with the union going away, we now take control over this. Faculty have a voice, employees have a voice, and hopefully our outcome is going to be driven by people jointly at the table in that decision-making process. But it is a change.
John, you want to say something about this too?
Yes, I do. What I found is that even though faculty were not part of collective bargaining in the University of Wisconsin system in UW-Fond du Lac, there certainly was an impact in morale. The change within the state was enormous, and in fact, it was a very rancorous political atmosphere. An atmosphere where people were demonized, in fact, where political commercials basically said that public employees were greedy and they weren't willing to pay their fair share, and there was a kind of bitterness on both sides that did lead to morale problems. Within our campus and certainly within the UW system, you have a very, very strong tradition of shared governance that's written right into the code and, in fact, the way that we do things. And certainly we've tried to continue to make sure that we're very faithful to the spirit of shared governance.
We have just a minute or two longer. I want to invite each of the four panelists in a sentence or two to tell us something that they haven't yet told us that seems essential on this topic about is college for everyone. And James, why don't we start with you?
I was just going to say, I don't think I've actually answered that question, which was the topic of the panel. And my answer to is college for everyone would be no, it isn't. It is for many people, and it will continue to be for many people. I think in K-12 education, for a long time, we have pushed four-year education as the only option for kids, and anything less was not successful. I think there's now a swing to the other side to say that it should be all about technical school, or it should be all about workforce readiness and apprenticeships and so forth. I don't think either one of those is the correct answer. I think as a K-12 system, our job is to adequately show students the benefits of all of those opportunities and say which one is best for you and what you want to do with your future.
I'd also, I guess I haven't responded, is the college degree for everyone. Well over 6 months ago when I was invited to be part of this panel, I thought about that. I pondered about it. And as it got closer to today coming, my response to the question is a college degree for everyone? I would say no. I would reword it to say is education for everyone. I would say yes to that. It is very important to recognize that education, lifelong learning is the focus. It is the focus of what our many employers are going to look at. Once you graduate or you exit out, you don't graduate, you have X credits, continuing your education, continuing and believing in lifelong learning is really going to be the factor as we continue to move forth.
I think there's no question that the answer to the question is that everyone should have access to higher education and certainly lifelong learning. David Brooks in the New York Times wrote a column talking about the benefits, in fact, of getting a four-year degree. The College Board, in their publication, Education Pays, talks about what it means in terms of people's lives. What they document is that individuals with higher levels of education earn more, and in fact, they are more likely than others to be employed. Even with examples of people with college degrees driving taxis or being unemployed, the long-term trends are absolutely clear. The financial return is there in terms of the difference in earnings for someone with a four-year degree versus someone without. It's very clear that people who earn four-year degrees are healthier, they're more engaged, they're more involved in their communities, they're better prepared, they have children who are more likely to be successful. I think the case is very clear that, in fact, education pays. And that, in fact, if you ask people who have a college degree, they will tell you it was well worth the effort.
My personal view is that the committee set this out as a trick question. This is the same as asking, when did you stop beating your wife? I don't know of anyone who actually says a college degree is for everyone. That's like saying I could be a linebacker for the Green Bay Packers. I mean, look at me, folks. You know that's not true. And I don't think anyone is arguing that. However, I want to second what was just said here. I think not everyone, but more. And it isn't a degree for everyone, it's an opportunity. It's someone who lives in a house in Wisconsin without central heating, who's never been on a college campus, having that opportunity. You don't know where the potential is. And we do need more. We have actually a controlled experiment. Those of you in the sciences here know what I'm talking about. Look at the state of Wisconsin and look at the state of Minnesota. Minnesota ranks 11th in the country with the percentage of its population with a college degree. 11th. They are 11th in this country in per capita income for their citizens. Look at Wisconsin. We rank 26 in the United States with the percentage of our population with a college degree. We rank 26 in this country with in per capita income. There is a relationship, and we know it works. Yes, you can find outliers. You can find people without degrees who make tens of millions of dollars, but the vast majority, our economic future is dependent on more education, not just college degrees, but more education, and it's dependent on more opportunity. And that's the question. First, I think the test the committee was giving us was to say, wrong question, we got the trick. The second one is you focus on opportunity, and also, though, I think you focus on what education is really about. What is behind that degree? It is not just a piece of paper. It has to represent, yes, knowledge, yes, specific skills, but also the 3 C's of communication, critical thinking, and creativity. And I can't think of a 4th C. The 4th C is values. It isn't just about work. It's about how you live your life, how you live in the community, how you live in your family. And if anyone thinks we don't need more emphasis on values in this society, you're not paying attention and you're not educated. So, does everyone need a college degree? No. Do we need more opportunity for higher education, for quality education? Yes, absolutely.
Would you join me in thanking the panel?
I would like to point out today, as I pointed out, that we did give them a trick question. We also had them set up to do their remarks. We threw a curveball at them. And we talked up here today, and you had the value of a lot of insightful information from experienced people in education. And what you saw today was a wonderful example of adaptability. We threw a curveball at them, they handled it beautifully, and it was a very educational process. And again, on behalf of Marion University, I thank the panel. You really helped out in this discussion here today for the symposium.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.